All right, hi everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now, I'm very pleased to announce that today I have my very first movie review video request. And I could say, I do have some time right now, so if anyone has a movie they want me to review or something they want me to talk about, just feel free to leave it in the comment section. And if it's in my wheelhouse, I'll do it. If it's not, I'll let you know in the comment section. So, yeah, just let me know. Anyways, the movie that I'm going to be reviewing today is the 1998 film Dark City. Now, I remember when this film came out, and I remember wanting to see it. That's why I had no problem wanting to do a movie review on it, because I do remember wanting to see this film. But for whatever reason, I didn't. And I don't really know why. I seem to remember this movie kind of coming and going very quickly. It just sort of came and went. And I don't know why that was. It did go up against Titanic, so maybe that hurt this film. But yeah, I do know that critics really like Dark City a lot. In fact, Roger Ebert voted Dark City his number one film of 1998. He really liked it a lot, so much so he even did some commentary for the Dark City DVD release. But yeah, Roger Ebert really liked this film quite a bit, like I said. And, he wasn't the only one. Other critics did as well. This film won a lot of awards. It won a lot of awards. And it's often been compared to The Matrix. People will talk about this film and The Matrix and how they both sort of deal with a reality that, like, isn't what people think it is. And yeah, so the two films are compared. Now, this film was made by a filmmaker by the name of Alex Proyas. And Alex Proyas, before this film, had done the film The Crow. And the film The Crow was, if you could remember, a huge success. It was a huge success in spite of the fact that there was a tragedy on the set of The Crow, and Brandon Lee was killed in the making of that movie, which is a shame. Which really was a shame, because I really do believe that had Brandon Lee lived, he would have been a huge action star. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm pretty sure he would have been a huge star. But anyways, yeah, Alex Proyas did The Crow, then he did this film. This film was difficult for him to get off the ground. I know he said that he had some test screening, and the people in the test screening didn't like the film. Film was actually finished 2 years earlier in '96. That's when they finished shooting it. However, he had to do a lot of editing to try to make it where more people would like it, make it so it'd be a little easier to understand. I know that was an issue with the film, but anyways, it did come out, and it barely made its money back in '98 when it came out. Barely made its money back. But yeah, like I said, there's a number of reasons why that may have happened. But I myself, in watching this film, really liked it. I think it's a forgotten gem. I really do. I mean, it's creative, it's artistic. You know, Alex Proyas really kind of pushed his creative boundaries in making this film. It took a lot of risks. I mean, he did, and you could tell. It's not formulaic at all. I mean, there's nothing like this movie. But I am gonna talk about it now, and I'm gonna say this: there will be spoilers in this movie review. So if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. But I don't think I need to say that, because this film has been around since 1998. But yeah, like I said, this is definitely a good movie, definitely worth checking out for sure. But another thing I do want to add, though, is, the look of the film. I mean, it does have a very striking aesthetic to it. And it also has a very strong story. And oftentimes, sometimes, well, a lot of the time, especially nowadays, anyways, those two don't often go together. Sometimes you'll have a movie with a really strong story, but the visual effects won't be as good. A lot of times nowadays, you'll have some pretty strong visual effects, but it will be a weak story. But that's not the case with this film. Both are strong, strong visuals, good aesthetic, and really good, thoughtful storyline. I know in the 90s there was a time when, people were taking philosophical ideas and trying to put them into film. So that's definitely what you have here. But, anyways, well, another thing I do want to mention too is kind of how, like, the aesthetic, you see like a lot of people, and in the Crow as well, in this film, like wearing these like dark trench coats and all that. So it does have the feeling of what you had in the 90s with like the industrial music movement. You sort of get that vibe from this film, that kind of industrial music movement. I think there's even some industrial sounding music in this film. And you can remember that. I can remember that scene, and I can remember that scene being pretty big with bands like Ministry, Nine Inch Nails, and then there were other metal bands that were influenced by that as well, like White Zombie. Glenn Danzig with his fifth album was, went industrial. Some fans liked that, some fans didn't. Just kind of depended. But yeah, it does have that kind of vibe to it, that sort of like industrial kind of music vibe. And that's what I thought when I first saw the trailer of this film. Because I remember that being big in the 90s. And I did want to mention that. But yeah, anyways, the start of the film, it starts out with a character by the name of John Murdoch. And John Murdoch is in a bathtub. He wakes up, and there's a dead body next to him with some markings that appear to be ritualistic. You don't know what happened to him. You don't know who he is. You don't know what he experienced. But he's like suffering from some kind of amnesia. He doesn't seem to know what happened to him. He receives a phone call from a Kiefer Sutherland character. And the Kiefer Sutherland character tells him he's got to leave and be careful of the strangers. You don't know who the strangers are, then you see them, and they're these white beings that kind of look like Pinhead from Hellraiser minus the pins. And, they float. And one of them is played by the guy who played Riff Raff from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, an individual by the name of Richard O'Brien. So he plays one of these. But anyways, you could see that these beings have an ability known as tuning. And with tuning, they could, excuse me, they could alter the landscape, they could alter the buildings, they could move things telekinetically. They could do a lot of different things. They could create doors out of nowhere, just like, there'll be a brick wall and they'll create a door in the middle of the brick wall. So they could do a lot of things to sort of alter the landscape. But it's discovered that this John Murdoch also has the ability to tune. And they're surprised. They're wondering, why does he have the ability to tune? He shouldn't have this. So they're after him. Now, one thing they do is when it becomes 12 midnight, everything freezes. All the people collapse, everything freezes. The people basically go to sleep. And these beings, these strangers, then are able to implant memories into the people's minds. They switch people around. So someone might be a police officer, but then his memory will be switched with the memory of a banker, and so on and so forth. So it's sort of like it gets philosophical, like that raises the question of, well, okay, now that this person has a completely new memory, is this a completely different person? So it like raises that question, gets philosophical like that, and that I liked with this film. But anyways, like I said, they freeze everything. Then another thing they do is they do this like mass tuning thing where they all focus on this machine. They basically live in these like laboratories under the city. And there's this big machine there, and they all focus on the machine and they all tune at the same time, and they could completely change the shape of the buildings. And I have to say, I have heard some complaints about the CGI in this film. I saw nothing wrong with it. I thought the CGI and the buildings moving looked pretty cool. I didn't have any issue with the CGI in this film. I thought they didn't use a whole lot of it, but they used it for the right reasons, the way CGI should be used. And CGI can work well in science fiction films like this. So I thought they used the CGI in the right way in this film. But yeah, because I know, like I said, I know there were some complaints about that, people calling it primitive and whatnot, and I just didn't see it. It looked pretty good to me. You see some bad CGI stuff nowadays, some stuff that looks very cartoony, and I didn't really get the sense of that with this. But anyways, they have this ability to tune, and the strangers are still trying to find this John Murdoch character. And the strangers are trying to find him. John Murdoch finds out that he's wanted for murder. Detective is after him as well. A guy by the name of Bumstead, Detective Bumstead, and he's looking for this, John Murdoch character. And John Murdoch finds out he was married, that he had a wife. His wife's played by Jennifer Connelly, and it's interesting because Jennifer Connelly was also in another movie that I consider to be pretty underrated, and that's The Rocketeer. You don't hear anything about The Rocketeer, and I thought that was pretty good when it came out. I think I only saw it once because, something you don't often see. I don't think I've ever seen it on TV, ever. I saw it in the theaters once when it came out, and that was it. But yeah, The Rocketeer I liked. Another forgotten gem, I think. The Rocketeer. But anyways, getting back to this film, Jennifer Connelly plays his wife. He's being tracked down by this detective. Eventually, I know he's able to convince this detective Bumstead that he hasn't committed murders. The detective does agree, and the detective also agrees that the city's strange, that there's something strange with it. And you find out that this John Bumstead is looking for an area called Shell Beach. He grew up in Shell Beach. He wants to go to Shell Beach. No one seems to know where it is. He asks all these people, where is Shell Beach? And they're all like, oh yeah, I know exactly where Shell Beach is. Shell Beach is, you take that one road, you take a left at, and then their mind kind of draws a blank. They don't know where Shell Beach is located, and he can't find it. And he doesn't know why, but he does know he's from this Shell Beach. Well, eventually, this John Murdoch is told by the Kiefer Sutherland character that these strangers are actually extraterrestrials. And they're really these transparent jellyfish-like energy beings. And they occupy the bodies of dead human corpses, and they reanimate them. So they're kind of like these jellyfish energy being parasites that occupy dead bodies. And like I said, they're reanimated. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting concept with this film, how they had it like that. But anyways, he finds that out, and the reason why these extraterrestrials are doing all this is because they're of a hive mind. They're of a hive mind. They don't have any individuality among themselves, but they know humans do. They know humans do have individuality. They know humans do have free will. So they're trying to learn what they can from humans, hoping that maybe they could use the knowledge of individuality and free will to save their planet. Because, yeah, like I said, they don't have that. They're of this, like, one hive mind. But, yeah, and like I said, they live in these, like, laboratories that are under the city. But, eventually, what does happen is the character of John Murdoch, along with the detective Bumstead, come to a wall, and there's a sign that says Shell Beach. So they know they're right at Shell Beach. There's a sign, but there's just this brick wall. So they rip off the sign, they take these sledgehammers, and they start pounding the wall. And eventually they break up the wall, and you can see that on the other side of the wall is outer space. And then the strangers arrive, the extraterrestrials, and then the detective Bumstead, along with one of the extraterrestrials, gets sucked out into space, and you could see that the city, the dark city, is actually a space station in space. It's a space station with the city above it and these laboratories below it. So you could see the whole thing's one space station. There's some mention, I heard, that there's like a force field around it, so that, so people have air and whatnot and can breathe. But yeah, the whole thing is like one space station. I thought that was interesting. That reminded me a lot of like the Twilight Zone and those old Twilight Zone episodes. I really did. I know this film was influenced by the Twilight Zone. I know it was influenced by Tim Burton's Batman. There's some Blade Runner in it. There's some Metropolis, the 1927 movie. There's a lot of influences on this film, but it's still original. It's still a very original movie. And that's what I liked about it. It's not based on a graphic novel or anything. It's just a very original idea, and I thought that was very refreshing. But, yeah, anyways, what then happens is they capture this John Murdoch, bring him down to the laboratories, and then they bring him to a machine, and they're going to put some memories in him, like a collective memory into him. However, the Kiefer Sutherland character puts memories where John Murdoch is learning and training and tuning. So he gets all these memories of learning and training and tuning. So when he has all these memories implanted, he's now really powerful and knows a lot about tuning. And then he's so powerful, he takes on the leader of the strangers, an individual by the name of Book. They have like different names like Book, the Hand. Maybe that has something to do with the hive mind they have and how they went about naming themselves. But anyways, they then get into this like battle where they're like using telekinetic powers at one another, and eventually John Murdoch ends up killing the Book leader, and then he dies and everything starts falling apart. And then finally it's revealed that that this John Murdoch can use the machine and tune into the machine and create things in the city. So he does that. He tilts the city toward the sun, so the city lights up. He then brings back Shell Beach. So there's now Shell Beach and there's an ocean. And that's pretty much it. The movie ends right about there. So again, really liked this film. Thought it was a great movie. Again, if you want to see me do a movie review, just leave a message, and if it's within my wheelhouse, I'll do a movie review where I'll talk about whatever topic you want me to. And if I can't, I'll let you know in the comments. So if you've watched this video, as always, I thank you for watching. Have a good night.